Not so far. It should be working today. Hopefully we're over all the voice issues.
Hey folks. So there's a question about why the meetings in voice. We originally did that with the bento meetings, which is where this one started. And a couple of times we've asked if people had a preference, and generally the vote has been for continuing to do it in voice. So that's what we've been doing.
I think sometimes it's a lot easier to get everybody's questions answered too. Keep the pace of getting everybody's responses back to them.
Yeah, it is easier to get behind if it's all typing. All right, we might as well go ahead and get started. Alexa, have you done any update yet?
I have been waiting for you, and I think this is your baby.
All right, well, let's see here. We've got so potentially some big things coming pretty soon. As you know, we've been trying to get Animesh out onto RC on Agni for a while. That could be happening as soon as next week. Not positive it'll happen that soon, but the goal is to get Animesh simulator deployed to some subset of regions on Agni. The blocker for that has been that we wanted to get the viewer in a sufficiently fixed state. That doesn't mean that all the bugs are fixed in the viewer or will be fixed in the viewer, but we're trying to avoid making changes that are going to break existing content once it's possible to create content. So I want to talk a little bit about what is and isn't going to be fixed in the Animesh viewer before we go live on Agni. There are two issues we've been particularly trying to get sorted out. One that we've talked about in these meetings before is the encroachment issue, trying to make sure that the position where an Animesh object displays is not too far offset from its kind of official position. So, the idea that you can't use a combination of joint offsets and offsets due to animation and whatever to drastically alter an object's location and have considered to be. So we've got a fix for that working now. I have to pick a final number. I'm thinking it's probably going to be something like 3 meters. Basically, that the bounding box of all of your joints and the meshes that are attached to those joints should be within in that distance from your official location as registered by the server. So the next project viewer will have that fix in there. Another issue that's been pointed out is that we haven't been respecting the Z height fix-up setting. When you upload a mesh, you can specify that you want your mesh to be higher or lower based on a value that you type in at upload time. And that setting gets applied for if the mesh is attached to your avatar, but it doesn't get applied if the mesh is attached to an animesh skeleton. So we're trying to get a fix in for that as well. One area where a couple of areas we've talked about that there's, we're not going to have all the fixes in for. There's some questions about LODs and bounding boxes. That is, just an ongoing slog. We've, Graham and I have both put a lot of time in on it, and it's just not all going to get sorted by next week. We are going to continue working on it after that. There's also the question of orientation for objects. We've got this thing where some objects will do a kind of a 90-degree rotation when they get, and it's really part of a larger set of issues, because if those objects have a physics representation, the physics representation can also continue to exist somewhere that's not actually near where the animesh is displayed, and you sort of ran obstacle stuck in the landscape. So the recommendation, for people who are trying to create content when we first go live, is I think the best practice is going to be to have a non-mesh root object and associate any physics representation with that non-mesh root object. I think if you do it that way, then any additional fixing we do on orientation shouldn't break existing content, and we will continue to look at that once this goes live on AGNI. So those are a few different things. I should scroll back here. What about all the bugs? I hope I just covered that. Another project viewer to test the LOD change. We will be updating the project viewer before anything goes live on AGNI, and as I say, that's hopefully going to have the fixes for the two issues I was talking about, the encroachment and the Z height fix. The encroachment stuff actually requires a bunch of new infrastructure. What we're doing is doing smarter tracking of the bounding box for rigged meshes. So we're keeping track of sort of an individual bounding box for each joint for any associated mesh vertices, and then to get a reasonably accurate bounding box, we can just transform those per joint boxes without having to crawl through the entire mesh every frame. Just slow. It seems to have decent performance. It does have it does take a noticeable amount of time, but it's not going to trash anybody's performance, I don't think. Not if that becomes an issue there. Let's see, what else? Rush for next week. Well, it's not really a rush. I mean, we've been trying to get this damn thing out for months now, but we felt like it was far enough along that we might be able to get it out safely. If something does come up where either there's a bug that we thought we could get fixed that we can't, or there's some other showstopper issue that comes up, then we will hold off. It's not that we're hell bent on releasing next week. Nothing happens, but that's the earliest time that we have a reasonable hope of getting it out. So I just wanted to let status there. The encroachment thing it's not tied to scale, but I don't think it's going to affect your dragons. I mean, a dragon is, it's okay, so it's 60 meters tall or whatever, but that's part of the bounding box of the joints and the bounding box of the mesh. So if it's 60 meters tall, then so be it. The only thing the encroachment would stop is displacing that 60-meter box so that it's more than 10 meters away from its official location. So I mean, it's it's not just, we're not just setting a blanket limit on how much of an offset you can have for a given joint. It's really based on how it affects the entire shape of the object. So I think that'll work, but yeah, we'll definitely need to get feedback on that. If it turns out that the limit is too tight, we can discuss it. 10 meters from the object's location. Now remember, when you first res your object, that has a location that the server knows about, and that's where the static mesh would display if it wasn't an animesh object. So that's your reference location that the animesh skeleton is trying not to get too far away from. Yeah, well, it's not the it's fine if the wing bones are 10 meters from the object location. It's just that the entire bounding box of the whole dragon can't be more than 10 meters away. So if you take the distance from the dragon's official location to the closest point on the bounding box of the entire skeleton, that can't exceed whatever the limit is, say 3 meters. So if it doesn't affect kind of how big can your model be, it only affects like how far can your model wander away from its kind of official reference position. I hope that's somewhat clear, but anyway, once people get a chance to try it out, you can let us know how it goes. Let's see. So what else is going on? Quite a bit in Bakes on Mesh land as well. Let's see. Is Anchor here?
Not seeing him, I'll ping him.
Oh, I'm not seeing Anchor. Okay. All right. We'll hang on. We'll hang on a minute to see if you can swing by. If not, I'll try to give a summary of what's going on for that. I don't know which RC it would go to. Don't really have an opinion about that. What are your thoughts on that? You're hoping for Magnum. Is that because of how well it works, or what regions it includes, or how many regions it includes? Fewest regions. And you have a sim there. Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure we discussed which RC we'd be going to much so far. Alexa, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm confirming right now.
Okay. How long in RC? I really think it's going to depend on how things go in testing and what else is in the pipeline. Yeah, I don't think that the rotation issue is going to go away in the sense that the skeleton is always going to match the object. I'm not even convinced that necessarily makes sense. I mean, depending on which modeling package you use, it may have its own ideas about what axes make sense, and you could wind up with something that's facing in a different direction or is turned on its side or whatever. I think that the skeleton needs to be in a predictable orientation relative to its root object. So that you can write a script that says, drive this thing forward and it'll work for any axis, for example. What I think is a problem is that these, because there's a mismatch between the static orientation and the rigged orientation, messes up the bounding boxes. You wind up with these stray boxes that kind of stretch out the extent of the model and aren't anywhere near where stuff is actually getting displayed. And it's also a problem because it leaves you with a physics rep that's potentially also in some random location that doesn't make sense. So I think the discrepancy has to be fixed. I don't think we're going to fix the discrepancy by making the skeleton line up with the object. I think the object still has a skeleton. But if we can get all that stuff fixed at all, which I hope we can, but it has been a slog. We spent a lot of time on it. Hey guys, you got to, see how it goes. I hope that we can make. Okay, Polysale, I need to clarify then. My understanding is that if you have a non-mesh root object and you use that as your reference, to which the skeleton gets resed, and then you drive it forward, that forward is going to look the same regardless of where your mesh came from, because wherever your mesh came from, it's going to get scorched around to line up with the skeleton. If that's wrong, then we need to. Are there more bugs too? There are more bugs too. Which particular ones are you thinking about? Yeah, we tried to go through the list of bugs and identify ones that would actually change the behavior of existing content if we fix them after C. Those are the ones we're most worried about. There are bugs like, sometimes the wrong LOD gets selected or the bounding box extent is screwed up. That is something that you can potentially improve after the fact. You'd want to try to avoid fixing something like the Z height issue after we go live. Change the behavior. Animations not being removed on no copy animation removal. Yeah, that's something that we may fix, but it seems like more of a corner case. I don't worry about a lot of stuff getting broken if we go live with that issue. And again, the point isn't that we're going to have every issue fixed before we go live. The point is we want to have enough things fixed that we can, start doing reasonable testing on Agni, without a high likelihood that content is gonna alter after that. Yeah, well, the goal is, as I say, the goal isn't to rush it out. If we become convinced that it's not in a RC worthy state, then we'll hold off longer on putting.
And it really has nothing to do with SLB 15. This is just where we are with our server rotation as far as doing deploys and with other schedules we've got.
I see Anchor's here now. Anchor, do you want to give us the Big Sun Mesh update?
Yeah. So there will be a new project we will build out for the new Big Sun Mesh stuff I was working on. It has the 5 new baking channels and 9 new tattoo layers. So yeah, we're in the process of getting that deployed. So either expect to build either to the end of the day today or tomorrow, and then after you guys test it, we can talk more about it next week. Yeah, that's all.
So this includes the new wearable type, the universal wearable
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that includes all of the channels, old and new.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. Would be wearable alpha capability for the new channels. Do you mean that the alpha wearables themselves have the ability to modify those new channels? I'm not sure what channels are currently included in the alpha wearables. Do you know, Anchor? I'm pretty sure you can do upper, lower, head, eyes.
It's pretty much like all the older ones.
Yeah. Well,
Like the
that's an
6 old
interesting
ones.
that's an interesting point. If we have a new if we have the ability to create wearables with the new channels, but there's not any sort of corresponding way to mask them with alpha wearables. That's probably something we should at least think about. But yeah, that's definitely not included in the next path. I'm not sure what bakes on mesh for non-wearables means. The baking service bakes the contents of wearable textures. If the question is whether the baking service is going to be extended to composite other things besides the wearable textures, we don't have any immediate plans to do that. This is time estimate for Bakes on Mesh final. No, I mean we're still kind of adjusting what it includes week to week based on how things are going in testing. So you can't really project a completion date if you don't have a final spec. Yep, when it's done. How does that work? Real soon now isn't as soon, right? Nothing new on scripted control of bakes. We're not currently working on it. We haven't definitely ruled it out for what we're going to be releasing with. So what are you guys working on these days? Been doing any more testing on either Animesh or Bakes on Mesh? I can tell you, Lucia, you keep filing bugs. I'm not sure what percentage you're normally hitting with Glod. Does anybody have numbers on that one? Yeah, you do get penalized for going above 50%. I think the concern is that the cost should start kicking in, sooner than that. Basically, that the goal should be to target, a greater reduction in percentage going down to the lower LEDs. It's 50% drop when you go down to each tier. So yeah, high. The medium is supposed to be 50% of high, and the low is supposed to be 50% of medium, and so forth. GLOD is the package that's used by the mesh uploader to generate automatic levels of detail. So if you just upload a mesh and let the lower LEDs get made automatically, which may or may not give you good looking results, it'll try to hit a certain range of number of triangles, and that's what they're talking about here. Yeah, for other meshes, and for things like upload costs, we are evaluating all of that stuff. That's part of the Arctan project. So I would not be surprised if we wound up doing some similar things there, but there's no final decisions. I think we're still collecting data on that. Graham, do you want to say anything about Arctan?
Yeah, the Arc10 project is going to have much more significant changes to the cost formula than just what we're talking about with this LOD cap.
But avoiding penalizing people for creating LODs is definitely one of the things we want to be looking at in that project.
I don't expect that the limits that we have for Animesh are going to get changed a lot by Arc10. It's mostly focusing on making sure that things that actually render slowly are being appropriately tagged for their cost.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a plus if we can have rules that have the desired effect and are also kind of consistent and make sense. Sometimes those aren't mutually compatible goals, though. So I guess we'll kind of have to see how it all shakes out. Oh, that's some fancy hair. Well, okay, it's expensive hair. Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely curious to see the formula as you're working on this. I do think that the land impact formula is already pretty complicated and requires quite a lot of explanation. So aside from just the incentive structure, I do have some concerns that just making the rules more complicated is going to make people more confused about how to apply them as well. Your breakdown of the calculation in the upload window. Yeah, there's a lot of things that could be better in the mesh uploader. It hasn't gotten a lot of love in a long time, and it was never that easy to understand to begin with. But also bear in mind that we're not changing the upload costs in the context of Animesh. I mean, when we're uploading things, we don't even know whether they're going to be used as Animesh. The formulas that we're talking about now are for streaming cost calculations for Animesh, which affects the land impact of Animesh objects rezzed in world, which is actually a separate thing from fee that's charged, on upload. Object S try count. When can we get? Maybe later. Honestly, I think it's likely to stay a fixed constant, so I'm not sure that making it a you're talking about like for a particular object, what the triangle count is, not what the limit is, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's in the possible future work bucket. Definitely not before we go out to RC or with the initial release. So, Polysale, you're saying something like 30% rather than 50. Is that sort of your bottom line? With also a more extensive calculation. Yeah, it'd be good to give people better feedback. Of course, the problem is that since at the time we're uploading, we don't know whether something is an Animesh or not. Yeah, just clicked on the world instead of the UI. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Yeah. So obviously there's different sides of the cost equation. You don't know at the time you're uploading whether it's Animesh or not, so you can't give people the rundown on the cost formula unless there's some kind of uniform cost formula that applies to everything, which right now there isn't. And then in terms of on the one hand, how high you can go without getting penalized, and on the other hand, how low we want to encourage people to go. The formulas get more complex there. We definitely don't want to be penalizing people or perceived as penalizing people for just having LODs at all. The rules need to be kind of clear and simple enough that if you have a more detailed proposal, I'm chat about it. Joint position should say for making this an Animesh. Maybe. Hook it into which dropdown? No, the dropdown that describes what kind of a model it is. So we add like a category for Animesh or something like that. Yeah, no, that would be one way to do it. In terms of the timing, I think the Arctan stuff may be happening before anybody would have time to look at, changing the mesh uploader anyway. But if not, then that would be one possible way to improve the feedback without, even if we don't have sort of a uniform set of rules at the time. There's an awful lot of state that isn't well documented in the uploader UI right now. Well, that is a shaggy table, all right. Stool. Yeah, the formula may be in the wiki in some form, but yeah, we do want to take another pass at the documentation and make that at least clearer than it is now. Five land impact, huh? Yes, as we've discussed, there's some problems with the formula. All right. Well, any other questions for this week? We can, anybody wants to stay in chat can, but we can wrap up the official part of the meeting if there's not anything else.
I do have a minor bento issue, BVH issue I wanted to bring up.
Oh, okay, cool. What's that?
Okay. It's a BVH importing problem. Right now we can import with BVH, the bones can have basically 3 different names. You have your traditional BVH names, such as hip for the M pelvis, or L shin for the left knee, the M knee left, or you can use the actual bone names of the bones in the skeleton. So M pelvis works just fine. And then the third way of doing it is we have the word avatar and then an underscore and then the bone name, the regular bone name on it. And I was working with a customer yesterday trying to figure out a problem that she was having with making animations with multiple avatars. And what ended up happening was that the joints that were named avatar underscore in any of the new bento bone names, the new bones, were not being up, when the BVH was uploaded, those animations were being dropped off. So it should be a simple fix of fixing the joint map to include all the new bento names, bones with avatar underscore in front of them.
So what is the advantage to doing that versus just using the actual bone names in the animations?
Right. The advantages with using avatar underscore in front of the bone names is that in Maya doesn't like it when you have 2 different skeletons using the same bone names. So to get around that, I create one skeleton with avatar underscore and then the bone name, and then just another regular skeleton. And it works fine when you're animating all the normal bones, the original bones, such as the M elbow right or the M elbow left. But whenever you animate a bento bone, then the uploader won't work. I'll put a little link into the local chat, the error that I received, and I'll put another link to in the forums to where there's a list of these joint maps.
Yeah. Okay, really the best thing to do is to just file a JIRA for it. That makes it easy for us to track the issue. And as you say, if that's something we do, it's probably an easy fix. But want to make sure that it's tracked somewhere so we don't forget about it.
Sure, I'll file a JIRA, no problem. But I just
okay.
Since
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I don't know offhand what's going on with that. We do have a list of recognized aliases, like in the skeleton file, and define one or more aliases for each bone, and then we'll just accept those names. So I don't know if the avatar underscore is something that's specifically listed in our XML file, or if there's some special case handling where it's on automatic. In any case, we could see if we're doing something consistent with that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
if possible, it's obviously the simplest thing is just to use the actual bone names, but there's cases where that's not. It might be reasonable to support it in the viewer.
Right. The interesting thing is that Firestorm will upload the animation, but when you play the animation, the bento bones, we're using if you use a skeleton using avatar underscore to make the animations, so that when you upload that with Firestorm, all the normal bones will animate just fine, but the bento bones won't move at all. But when you try to upload the same file with Linden Lab Viewer, you get the error pop up that I showed in the link that I put in the local chat. So it's interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, it's just probably just a different set of kind of recognized aliases, depending on which which app you're using.
Right. If the alias, because it recognizes the alias avatar underscore for all the original bones, like I said, like the M shoulder left or the M shoulder right, with avatar underscore in front of it. So it recognizes those aliases. It just doesn't recognize it for the bento bones.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We had a couple questions about which RC for Animesh. Don't know yet. Lex had talked to the people who do the simulator deploys, and they said there's two different things potentially going out next week. So, like, one of them would go to Magnum, and one of them would go to Blue Steel and Le Tigre. But there's no specific decision about where Animesh should go. People at this meeting who expressed a preference were all talking about Magnum, I think. If you have any other feelings about it, I don't know if that forum post is current with what we've done since Bento days or not. Well, that's a pre-Bento post, so it probably doesn't include everything that we currently recognize. All right. Well, I guess we're about at time. We should probably wrap up for this week. So yeah, well, watch the forum posts and the viewer updates, and we will keep you posted. May have stuff going out as early as next week, or it could wind up longer, but we will. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Fear.